Hi book friends, I'm Erin, and this is Erin Go Read. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite types of books, and that is the chunky monkeys. Those huge books that can be intimidating but oh so engrossing, and I am specifically going to talk about those chunky monkeys that are on my TBR. I'm no stranger to big books. I like big books. Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett is my favorite book of all time, and I read 4 Folletts back to back. Each book was right around 1,000 pages, so it's not something I haven't done before. It has been a while since I read anything probably over 700 pages. The first 4 books I'm going to be going over are books that are on the PBS Great American Read Top 100 list. These are the 4 longest of the books that I own. I do own probably 60% at least, maybe of the top 100 now. And I'm going to start with, at least for the purposes of this list, John Irving's A Prayer for Owen Meany. I've read one other John Irving, Until I Find You, which was a gift from my friend several years ago. He's one of her favorite authors, and it was one of my first introductions into historical fiction. So that was I have a great association with John Irving for that. So this was written in 1989, in this edition, which I really like, with this old outbuilding there and that old red truck. This is 627 pages. And this is by far the shortest of the 4 on this list that I'm going to be showing you. The next book on this list is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. This was published in 1985, and this edition has 945 pages, just under 1,000. Now, I just got this in the mail today from Thrift Books, and I read the first paragraph, and I just wanted to keep going. Listen to this first sentence. When Augustus came out on the porch, the blue pigs were eating a rattlesnake. Not a very big one. I'm intrigued. Next. This is a chunky monkey, and it is a beautiful edition of Gone with the Wind. This edition is by Scribner and is 959 pages. It is quite heavy, and this was published in 1936. I know many people I've heard who have read this book love it. So I'm really excited to get into this one. A little intimidated still, but I'm really excited. And just when you have a beautiful edition of a book, I think it can help you overcome any trepidation you might have, because I just want to dive right into this guy. The Beast of Them All, the King of the Chunky Monkeys, is Stephen King's The Stand. And that is a creepy cover. So this is a dystopian. I recently heard a really good synopsis and overview of this by Natasha over at My Reading is Odd. This was published in 1978, and this is a whopping 1,153 pages. So that's going to take a little while. I forgot about Dune. Isn't this a beautiful edition? Dune was published in 1985, so this year is the 35th anniversary. Happy birthday, Dune. And this edition is 617 pages. And again, when you have a beautiful edition of a book, don't you want to just dive right in? Next up are just chunky monkeys on my TBR that have nothing to do with the PBS Great American Read list. And the first one actually inspired maybe a project I'm going to be doing. So the first is Barbara Kingsolver's new book, Unsheltered. This was my book of the month choice for November, so it probably came out in December of 2018, and this edition has 462 pages. So not massive, but I put it in this list because of a project I thought of. So I'm very aware of Barbara Kingsolver, but I've never read her. She's most well known for the Poisonwood Bible, and this was another one of those situations where the cover really determined whether I read it or not. So this came out in 1999, and it always had this really, what I thought, just drab looking cover of it was like a Bible page turning, and it was just like beige, and it just really didn't appeal to me. It was a big book with a cover that was not appealing to me. But this is the Harper Perennial Modern Classics edition, and just look at that. So this made me think it would be fun to do a project where I take a new release from an author, pair that with an older release, something very popular from their backlist, and read them either in back-to-back months or within the same month, and do kind of a now and then look at this author's work. So in this case, this is going to be a difference of almost 20 years between Unsheltered and the Poisonwood Bible. And if I didn't say, this edition is 543 pages of the Poisonwood Bible. And just a little bit more love for this edition. So we have deckled edges, those uneven edges, and French flaps. Yes, please. Looking forward to that. I'm thinking I'll probably pick this up when it gets a little warmer, as I believe it is set in Africa, and I tend to pair my feelings towards books kind of are seasonal and what feels appropriate at the time. Next up is Haruki Murakami's latest book, Killing Commentadore. I think that's how you say that. This guy is 681 pages and is an interesting, this is a cutout right here. So if we take off the cover, we have a whole peekaboo. And then you have this naked hardback of like the moon with this big eye. I guess that's an eye or something. I was going to try to give you my own synopsis of this, but I'm just going to read it because I'm not going to be able to do Murakami justice by just trying to remember. In Killing Commentadore, a 30-something portrait painter in Tokyo is abandoned by his wife and finds himself holed up in the mountain town of a famous artist, Tomohiko Amada. When he discovers a previously unseen painting in the attic, he unintentionally opens a circle of mysterious circumstances. To close it, he must complete a journey that involves a mysterious ringing bell, a 2-foot-high physical manifestation of an idea, a dapper businessman who lives across the valley, a precocious 13-year-old girl, a Nazi assassination attempt during World War II in Vienna, a pit in the woods behind the artist's home, and an underworld haunted by double metaphors. Very Murakami. This will be the third Murakami I've read. I read Kafka on the Shore over the summer and really enjoyed it. I previously read Sputnik Sweetheart maybe 5 years ago, and I honestly don't remember much about it. So I think many people are kind of over Murakami. He tends to do a lot of the same kinds of things in his stories, and so a lot of people love him for a while and then kind of are over it at a certain point. I'm not over it yet, so I'm excited to dig into that chunky monkey. Next up is Kristen Hanna's The Nightingale. This is 565 pages of World War II historical fiction. Kristen Hanna wrote The Great Alone, which came out, I believe it came out in 2018. I read it this past summer and absolutely adored it. It was one of my favorites of 2018, so I'm really excited to get into more from her. Next up is a booktube darling. This is Kate Atkinson's Life After Life. So this is a story of a woman who essentially repeatedly dies. So she dies, and then it's like, well, what if that didn't happen? And there's some other iteration of her life, and then she dies, and then the next one is, well, what if that didn't happen? And you get some other iteration of her life. So this is 525 pages. I'm really, really looking forward to reading this one. I don't know if I'm going to be able to stop myself from reading it sooner than later. Next up is a modern classic. This is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. This copy is 601 pages, and this is the, what do they call it, the Steinbeck Centennial Edition. And it's beautiful, deckled edges, French flaps, and there's a whole collection of his books that look like this, and they look beautiful on the shelf next to each other. I have The Grapes of Wrath and Cannery Row in this same edition, and they look amazing on the shelf next to each other. I might pair this one with The Grapes of Wrath, maybe read them in the same month or in subsequent months. We'll have to see. The Grapes of Wrath isn't quite as long, but I'm really interested. I read Cannery Row about 13, 14 years ago or so and really liked it. And I remember in like 6th grade having parts of the Grapes of Wrath read to me. And I have family who, my great-grandparents lived through the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma, living on farms and eating Hoover hogs, also known as rabbit. So I'm really interested in getting into Grapes of Wrath as well as East of Eden. And finally, the chunkiest monkey of the non-PBS Great American Reads books is The Crimson Petal and the White by Michel Faber. And this edition is 894 pages. So this is historical fiction about a prostitute who wants to make her way up in the world, and I guess it chronicles her doing that and climbing the social ladder, and whatever that means for a prostitute to do that. So I've heard a lot of great things about this one and Michel Faber in general, and so I'm really looking forward to getting into his work and starting off with The Crimson Petal and the White. Editing Erin here. Since I first filmed this Chunky Monkey video, I have since received a new huge chunkster that I wanted to add to this list before I put up this video. I've since gotten a haircut as well, so not great for continuity, but there it is. I wanted to include this. So that is Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This is book 1 in the Wheel of Time series. This was published in 1990, so almost 30 years now. This is number 62 on the Great American Read Top 100, and this edition is 771 pages. So that guy is significantly large. So I'm quite intimidated by this book, but I've heard nothing but good things about this book and this series in particular. So as I was editing, I also realized that I never set forth like a plan for how I intend to read these or how quickly I intend to read these big chunky monkeys on this list. So I'm thinking that I'll probably every other month or so start off the month, choose one of these books, whether they're on the Great American Read list or not, choose one and start the month with it, and no pressure as to how long it takes me to read it. Just read it till it's finished, and just kind of be reading by whim. So in the meantime, I'm excited about reading, I think, all of these books, and now I have a new chunky monkey to add to the list. I'm not even going to attempt to hold up all those books at once, so I'm just gonna sandwich myself here between Gone with the Wind and The Stand. Please give me a thumbs up, comment below. Have you read any of these books? Are you intimidated by big books, or do you love diving into them and getting engrossed in such a long story? Subscribe if you want to see more. See you around the tubes.